Going live on YouTube.
Hi, everybody. Hello. It is I, Jennifer from Little Metal Foxes. And I've got Julia also.
Also from Little Metal Foxes.
And we got a guest with us today. It's Nisa Blackman. Hi.
Hey,
How are you doing?
doing good, doing good. Trying to get over a cold, but
Oh,
not doing pretty
well,
well.
you said you just got back from Aeromont.
I did taught a week-long workshop on cold connections for beginners. It was really great. We covered rivets out the wazoo, all different kinds of rivets, a little bit on tab construction. Did some actually talk about sewing and what else? Micro hardware, very very tiny, sexy hardware. So
Uh-huh.
very
Uh-huh.
cool.
I
I
do
love
like
them.
I do like the tiny hardware. That's one of the
Mhm.
things that when I do tap and die, that I'm like, you don't have to actually buy all the hardware, or you don't have to buy the hardware, but
Yeah.
it helps. And then if you have a tap, that helps. So,
Yes, yes, yeah, a
uh,
jeweler's
uh,
today.
like little optical screws and things like that.
Mhm.
I love
Yeah,
it.
you can get those from a lot of places these days. It's nice.
Yeah, right. Used to be a lot harder to get.
I was just going to say it used to be much harder to find those things. And
Mhm.
now with the intertubes, the world is your micro hardware oyster.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's your micro hardware shop. It's like it's an 8 by 10. So yeah. So Anissa, we've got you teaching tab construction coming up soon, and we are thrilled because your work is amazing, and you're using a lot of cold connections to put that together, and using things like non-traditional materials like all kinds of stuff, paper and creative plastics and all kinds of things.
That's what cold
Um,
connections are good for.
yeah, absolutely. So, but tell us a little bit about tab construction.
Well, tab construction is a completely solder-free method of building three-dimensional structures. So you can use the tabs to actually hold the piece together in the same fashion that vintage tin toys were put together. If you like vintage tin toys, which I totally do, take a look at the way that they're put together sometime. And even ones that are really meant to be played with, like even some of the not the lightweight steel tin plated stuff, but the heavy duty Tonka toys, those are put together with tabbed connections. And so they're super sturdy, and you can use them not only for functional connections, but also as an aesthetic component. They can also be used to hold things in place, like in the same fashion that a prong setting does. So they're incredibly versatile. It's all done with very simple tools and processes, and they're just an endless variety of them. Huge, huge fun, ball of problem solving and design.
Engineering,
So,
problem
yeah,
solving and engineering. Oh my
yes,
God. Makes
exactly.
my little
That's what
brain.
I like about them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So, you've got some favorite tools for this?
I do. I've got a few things here. Some things are really what you'd expect, and that's the cool thing about tab construction is you don't need a bunch of fancy tools or machinery or anything like that. It's all very much hand constructed, and the basic like your basic tool is a jeweler soft ring, and also like really really good uh, graph paper. I don't know how fast you can see.
Oh,
This
yeah.
8 squares to the inch, which is what I use. You want something that has really small squares because you're usually dealing with little tiny um, shapes for your tabs. And so 1/4 inch doesn't really work that great. If you're a metric girl or a metric person, metric graph paper is great, but I really like this 8 squares to the inch, which is just about the right size for a tab. It's 1/8 of an inch. And then some other really simple ones is having a good variety of flat nose pliers. Okay, I must have like 8 or 9 pairs of these and different sizes. And these are very useful. Also, our friend, the parallel plier,
Parallel job
is
pliers. I
very,
could not live
very
without
useful
those.
for a
Yeah.
lot of things. So, but the flat nose in particular are useful for getting your tabs started, for truing up corners, different things like that. So those are kind of the basic things. And then again, saw frame, good saw blades, really good saw blades because you do a lot of piercing. So I like real laser golds are my go-to brand. But something that's not as perhaps immediately evident that I find incredibly useful is a lot of little wooden blocks.
Oh,
Yeah, and just
Perfect sense.
any different sizes. You can anything from like the cut off end of a wooden paintbrush. I use these for pushing tabs over. Little square dowels, larger square dowels, round dowels, and then you really need a bunch of little small shapes in wood, things that might fit inside the shapes that you're constructing out of tabs.
Yeah.
That have nice, clean, 90-degree corners. That's critical. And they have to be a fairly hard wood. So maple blocks, oak blocks, even pine blocks. Like here's a good pine block that I use all the time. Just as long as they have really nice, clean corners. You can buy bags of these, not this particular one because these were cut for me, but you can get in the craft stores, you can get squares of like poplar cubes, and
Yeah.
there's a good variety of them. And those are great to have because these are things that you need small shapes to bend your corners over to make your folds. And in addition to like a good steel bench block, like a 2-inch block or a 4-inch block, a selection of things that you can use to help bend your corners over, and something non-marring to pound them down, like a little rawhide mallet, some of the smaller rawhide mallets, really good to use along with these guys. And then because these are beautiful wooden blocks, you can play with them in your studio when you're like having a moment and need a break. So a good selection of teeny tiny little metal blocks and sticks and shapes, in hardwoods with clean corners to use for bending corners and pushing the tabs over is very useful.
Well, just, talking about just the use of wooden blocks in the studio, just that alone.
Oh,
There are
I know.
so
Like,
many uses for little
a
wooden blocks.
little house. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I mean, I
yeah,
end up
great.
using some of those for pedestals for some of my jewelry,
Mhm.
but they're great as a sanding block because you
Oh,
can
yeah. Mhm.
sandpaper to it. They're
Yeah,
great. It's one of yours you've got as a drilling block. And it's just good to have things like the dowels, especially if you're trying to sand something inside
mhm.
a mandrel, or even forming your waxes and things
Yeah,
over a piece of wood. So, yeah, don't, yeah, people are like, well, I work in metal. And it's like, I've got to have metal anvils. No, those
yeah.
hardwood
Yeah,
squares.
they're good because you can bend over these and they're never going to scratch up your metal. Which you can if you've got an anvil with a crappy surface. You can really ding up your metal inadvertently.
Yeah,
So having a bunch of these around to use, and not only to form around, but to help in. We'll talk about this in the class, but to help with pushing because a block with a broad surface can apply that pressure all along a fold that you want. It has to be straight, when it folds. And so you want the same kind of pressure. And you can do that with a wood block, whereas you can't with a pair of pliers.
right.
Except for, okay, I just discovered these recently for use with another class that I was taking. I was doing a workshop with Barbara Miner about using copper mesh. And she turned us on to these, which are the most amazing pliers. I think they come from like the sheet metal fabrication industry. They're called conforming pliers.
Mhm.
And these, unlike even your best set of flat nose or parallel pliers, look how wide the jaws are.
Yes,
This is like
like
the
a little
two
mini
and a half
bending
or
ring.
about 2.5 inch. I think this is almost the largest size that you can get for sort of jewelry applications, but they range from 1 inch wide to up to about, or maybe this is like the 2 inch, and then there's a 3 inch. So they come in really, nice sizes. And as long as you've got enough distance in the throat here, you can put these against a seam and they apply pressure all along that seam and bend it all down
Yeah.
all the time,
Well,
which is the greatest thing in the world. So confirming pliers
yeah,
are,
one of the other things
yeah,
about confirming pliers is that they're filed to the tip.
yeah.
So you can actually overbend into like a 60-degree angle,
Yeah.
and be able to get like a really sharp edge that's, yeah,
Very, very, very fine,
yeah.
very well ground. I can't get this in focus, but
We
yeah.
don't have those listed, do we, on your under recommended tools for your class?
We should probably add them. I didn't put them on because they're not cheap, and
Right.
you don't have to have them. Like
You
these
don't
are
have to
not,
have
you don't have to run out and buy a set of these to
them. Right.
do tab construction. But if you work with sheet metal or if you work with copper mesh, where you are having to you want nice, clean bends and folds. And if like me, maybe you hate scoring, like I hate scoring with a passion. So there are things you can do to get around that. And having something like these is very handy. But so yeah, so if you're interested in using them, great.
We'll just leave it, and it
Yeah.
can be a little bonus for the people in the class that they get to see you use them, and then
Mhm,
do is
mhm.
add the link when we put the
Right,
video.
we can add the link in the chat when we actually do the course because again, you don't have to have these. You don't have to have any sexy complex tools. You can do it with just very basic stuff. Yeah, there's another set. They're really nice like that.
This is
Or
a pair that I got when we were in Barcelona that are kind of this nice wide duckbill sort of
mhm, mhm.
shape. But I
Yeah,
love these because they are so much wider than
right.
your
And
typical.
the throat is deeper. Like
And
that's a problem with all of these is that you're limited by throat depth. While I was at Airmont, I saw a pair of long jawed flat nose pliers and I was like, where can I get a set of those? Because you can get way in, to areas that's like that increases your fabrication abilities with tap construction to no end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
these are
yeah, so
about,
anything that's really long jawed or wide,
yeah.
flat, is really good.
And these have about an inch and a half,
That's good.
but
That's good
because
because
they're
these
not
are only about an inch or so, and they're big. They're
but
big.
because they're not parallel, I would never be able to get a piece of like 20 gauge sheet all the way down in here because it's going to close and I
For
would need.
thinner sheet, that is an issue. For thinner sheets, like I use 24 gauge, 26 gauge, not as big a problem. So
Right, right,
that's good. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
yeah, those deep jawed pliers are really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the confirming pliers though because they do give
Yeah.
you such a crisp edge. It's
I
such
do.
a tight edge
And
and they
actually, if you look at
parallel
it,
action as well. So
the jaws are, the jaws are connected with these hex bolts.
mhm.
There's no reason why, if you wanted to extend that reach, you couldn't unscrew them, put a spacer in there, have something steel, kind of hefty, and have the reach be a little bit farther. So if you're into sort of, altering your own tools or making your own tools, something like this could be altered with no problem, I think.
Right.
A little
We
bit of,
could talk
know-how.
to Chris,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I can't remember who makes these. I bought them through Rio, but
right, but
Wants
Chris
yeah.
make an
awesome.
aftermarket kit to
Mm-hmm.
add on that you
Mm-hmm.
could buy from him, the plates, the extender plates that you could, Chris, if you're watching.
Yeah, yeah, we need this. We need this definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a very useful alteration for someone who's doing this kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but these are great when they can get, when you can get them far enough in.
Yeah. So wooden blocks, flat nose, and confirming pliers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and some small sized graph paper. Very, very useful.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love
So
it.
those are great tips. Thanks,
Mhm.
Nisa.
Excellent tips.
You're welcome.
For
You're welcome.
example, I mean, I'm a huge fan of graph paper, and I like having actually multiple sizes because depending on what you're doing,
Yeah.
my husband was an engineer
Oh
too.
yeah. So you've
Like
got all
he
different
had
kinds.
metric graph paper, and yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
It
whatever
really
you're
is.
comfortable using, but as small as possible is going to be useful for you.
Yeah. It's really nice to have that just in terms of doing the kind of the logistics and planning
Oh,
for your
it's
pieces.
critical. It
Yeah.
is.
So
It
a lot of
is. Yeah.
mine, because I'm working with some of my sculptural pieces, I have to be able to sort of draft out parts and patterns to be able to translate them, whether they're in mesh or in metal,
Right.
into the shape that they're in. And it's hard to do if I don't have something like graph paper to get the scale and the placement right.
Yeah, it's really critical because we're taking three-dimensional shapes and basically unfolding them to create our templates. And
right.
we have to be able to fold those back up. And if you don't have something like this graph paper, it's really hard to visualize which edges are going to come together, where the tabs need to be on those edges so they don't run into each other. It's
Right.
just all different things like that. Going from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions and back and forth, graph paper is kind of a must. So,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me. So.
Yeah. Planning.
Graph paper, mechanical pencil, eraser.
Yes. Oh, yes, the whole gamut, all the things. Rulers, good
Advice cut
rulers, good
ones.
rulers that match your graph paper. So,
Yes, yeah, ruler that matches your graph paper is
yeah,
also
yeah.
non-trivial. Yeah, metal rulers. I'm such a huge fan of metal. We did a whole tooltip on metal rulers at one point.
Oh, yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, one of our students turned us on to these, which are actually quite inexpensive.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And they have centimeters on one side and inches on the other, but it's really nice to have a really nice square corner in this scale, right? This is
Right. It's not your big carpenter square, which is like
right. It's like
bigger than my head.
this is 3 inches by 4 inches. And so it's a scale that it's good. And then having that nice sharp corner is really nice.
Yeah, I should get
Yeah,
one of those.
love you this. Well, that's awesome.
Down. Yeah, my when I was at work, my boss had all these plastic rulers, and I'm like, put on the list of things that I needed was a 6-inch metal ruler, and he goes, "We've got rulers," and I said, "Yeah, I need a 6-inch metal ruler," and he's like, "Well, what about these?" Because all of them were plastic, and he's like, "Well, here's a ruler," and I'm like, "No, I don't. No, that's not one. It's not accurate. Two, it's plastic," and he's like, "Well, why do you need a metal one?" I'm like, "Well, it doesn't melt, first of all. Second of all,
Yeah.
a lot more accurate."
You can't gouge it with an
It's,
X-Acto knife
I'm
or
like, and
file part of it
look
off.
at the edge on this plastic ruler. It's like, blah, 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 blah. So, from people like cutting and using it for other stuff, it's not a straight edge. And he was like, "Okay, so how many of those do we need?"
All rulers are not created equal. Yeah.
Exactly. They're not created equal. Yeah. And yes, and I have a ruler that has a cork on the back. It's like your classic metal ruler. And I love that for some things. Having the cork on the back is great if you're drawing a line with ink because it won't bleed under the edge, which is why the cork is there. But
also non-slip, which is nice. Yeah.
and slip. But for something like if you're scribing a line on metal, you don't want that, right? Because then you can wobble underneath the edge. Yeah. So for those of us for whom those kinds of accuracies are important.
Graph paper.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta put on your big girl precision panties, as we say, and you have to have the right tools to get that. So, yeah.
All right.
accurate measuring equipment is important.
It
I
is.
also have more than one. I have rulers that go because technically, from an accuracy standpoint, you really don't actually want 0 to be the end of the ruler, right? Because then you can't know for sure when the 0 has been worn away.
Yeah.
So technically, a ruler that has a little bit of metal before the 0 is
I like both for various purposes.
both because if what I'm trying to do is cut something to that length and I'm using the edge of this with my flush cutters, I want it to be on 0.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Nisa, thank you so much for joining us and all your good tool tips today. I appreciate it. I'm going to run out and get some more wooden blocks today, I think.
Yeah, one of my students actually had a friend of hers who's a woodworker cut her a full set of just all different sizes. And then she ordered one for me too. So that's all these really beautiful ones are, like scraps that a woodworker was using up their scraps. So it's a good way to support your local woodworker, and you don't have like things that look like they've been on your bench for 5 years. So
yeah. I've got a cabinet maker downstairs I'm about to go talk to.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
All right.
The minute you showed me that box, I was like, of course.
Of course, yeah. It looks like the what are those little builder blocks that
Oh yeah, they're gorgeous. They're all the ones that she cut for me are all hardwoods and beautiful grain and every once in a while at thrift stores you can find like Jenga blocks or other kids blocks, but they don't always have the sharp sides that you need. So you kind of got to be picky.
Yeah, right.
But, they're great.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks so much. We look forward to the tab construction class. And tell your friends because that's going to be amazing, everybody. And join us for that. So, and just in terms of like accuracy of construction and putting things together and sort of an alternative way to be able to join things, tab construction is just, one of those ones I think that's often overlooked. So it's a great way to go.
Not doing tab construction. Accurately bending something along a long edge is a non-trivial problem that the wooden blocks and the confirming pliers will both help you with.
Yeah.
Right. And I've got a few more tips as far as that goes that we'll get when we get into
holding something back to students.
Yes. For people who hate scoring. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Who doesn't? Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
maybe there's somebody out there who loves it, but
Well, there are some people who are very good at it, but I
Yeah,
am
there
not one
are.
of those people. So yeah, so
Yeah,
I found a workaround. I was taught a workaround. So
yeah. There are a couple people out there that are really good at it.
yeah,
Make
but
it
it's
look so easy. It's amazing.
yeah.
So, yeah,
possible to be good at something and not love it though. So
that's true too. All right. Well, Nisa, again, thank you. We look forward to the tab construction class, and thank you for your tips today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Always appreciate it. Always fun.